Victor Dandridge, the hardest working man in comics here, saying thanks to everyone who participated in our poll. The how-to that everyone chose for today is how to write comics. And obviously I can't give a definitive answer, but what I can give is my definitive answer for how I write comics. And the series that we're going to work on today, or showcase today, is this series here, Point of Authority Family Ties #1. This is a new series that I'm doing with Adam Fields. We actually just did a Kickstarter for it this summer that was very successful, funded in only 6 hours. And this is a big one to talk about my comic process. Okay, so first things first, you got to come up with your idea, your concept. And this could be something that you sit on for a long, long time. Point of Authority Family Ties is actually the sequel to a series called Origins Unknown Points of Authority. And obviously, this is one that if you are a VIP fan, you know came out originally as a digital comic in late 2011, early 2012. Before that, this was an actual comics concept or idea that I had talked about for years. I mean, I remember being at a Wizard World Chicago in 2004 telling someone about this concept, this idea that would eventually grow and evolve to become Origins Unknown. So having this concept and the initial, at least 2004, if not earlier. I mean, obviously earlier if I'm talking about it in 2004, and not executing that for another 7 years. Okay, so that's a long time to sit on a concept, but that's what happens. A concept is not a story, and it's very, very important to understand the difference between the two. You know, a story has to have that beginning, middle, and end. Obviously, if you've read Origins Unknown, that's not quite how that flows, but that was on purpose. But of course, you know, anytime that you're really having a really cool concept, you want to make sure that you're coming up with a story that actually matches that concept, lives up to it at the very least. So after we did Origins Unknown Point of Authority, that's where the germination for Family Ties came in. And I actually went through a lot of different iterations. It was called Family Ties in my head. It was called Bloodlines in my head. It took a while before I settled on Family Ties and really was secure with that process. But again, this is all about taking the time to live with this idea, let it marinate. You can't be worried about other people, hitting on this idea first. You just kind of have to just trust that your iteration, your execution of this idea will land when you get around to doing so. So have your concept, not a problem. Build a story in your mind, excellent. Then we go on to what I consider the first real step in the process of writing comics. For me, I write everything 3 times, 3 glorious times. So this is the first way that I do it. It's literally by hand. I write down all my scenes as this big outline. As you can see on the purple here, this is me actually kind of separating scenes or what I would call page spacings, different things that are going to happen as a series of events. I try to write out everything in prose so that I know exactly how the story is supposed to frame. I know the beginning, I know the end, and all the different points that I'm really trying to hit in between. This is what I do. So this is something that, I could write this in an evening. I could take, a few weeks to do. I want to say this one I did do in an evening. Like I just had some inspiration, it hit me, and so I sat down, wrote this out, and just let this kind of marinate for a little while, because I have this story down. Once I have the story down, I'm not so pressed that I have to do this right away. But it's good to kind of let it breathe so I can go back, look at it, make sure everything, lines up. It's not just I'm in love with the concept at the moment. I literally have written something worth, the time to complete and go through. Funny enough, this one I can't really remember when I wrote this actually, but I think I sat on this one for a few years, and I've done that regularly. Never Too Late, the sequel to The Trouble with Love. I originally wrote that outline in 2013. It took me another 3 years before I could write the full script for that. So there are times when, again, you gotta sit on some things. You have to let the inspiration hit you, and don't force it. Like don't do that, because that's when bad writing comes out, and I'm not a fan of forcing a story, trying to make something happen just to have something happen. No thanks. So this one I sat on for, we'll say, at least 2 years. I'm sure it's more than that, but at least 2 years. From there we go into, this is my binder. As you can see, it's from Origins Unknown. I try to keep like pieces, if they're of the same story branch or something like that, together. So I've got a ton of these black binders on my bookshelf around the corner here. From here, this is where I'm actually telling the story visually. So I printed out, these are You Create Comics sheets from my layout book. From Words to Pictures is the product line, and I printed out a ton of these sheets. Hole punch them so I could put them into this binder, and this is where I figure out this story visually. And a lot of times, if you guys are familiar with like Blue Line products, there's a lot of comic artists that use this to kind of break down, the imagery and pictures and whatnot. But I think writers should actually do this, because it makes sure that what we're asking for can visually be interpreted by the comic artist. And I think that's a huge, huge benefit to anyone that works with me, is that I have experience in the art side. I don't like to draw comics. I can draw comics, but I don't like to. So that means that I have kind of a proclivity to think visually. Like I think in that way. So this is me kind of executing that thought process. And, once I do, it's so much easier for me to, break down visually what happens here, and then just jot down a quick note for what exactly these scribbles mean. I mean, this isn't, high level illustration under any circumstance. These are squiggles at best, like maybe stick figures. But it gets across the idea, the action that I'm trying to get across in each piece. The way these pages are designed, I get 2 pages with every box. It's a total of 6 pages per sheet, and I just try to tell the story as best as I can, visually, breaking things down so I can understand the beats, the rhythms, all that stuff. This is actually issue 1 right here. As you can see, I've got not only issue 1, I actually have issue 2, and I've even started on issue 3. So I'm a little bit ahead of where we are in terms of the series. But from there, once I have that down and have that locked in, that's when I start scripting. That's when I take the information from the layouts and then I tell the story to the artist. And that's the important part about what my scripts are aimed to do. I try to give a lot of information, but it's not to dictate what I expect the artist to draw. It's me telling them the story so that they have all the information that they need in order to interpret it, to tell the story visually to the readership. That's the goal right there. So my whole process is about building the total story. So I understand it. I know exactly where it's supposed to go. I can see the scenes. I can see how they work together, how they support one another. Then I can start to break things down visually. And I use that information, that context, to write a script that I think sounds fun and interesting, that I'll give to the artist and ask them to do their best interpretation of what I've said. If they find a better way to do it, excellent. I'm all for that, because that's their stake in the game. They have to put their mark on it to make it their project, as opposed to just working for me. We are collaborators. That's the goal here. So when they do that, we've got a hit story. And I think you guys will really love Point of Authority Family Ties #1. You'll be able to see how this actually played out as a whole. I think maybe, once we get finished with this series, I will do something kind of cool and interesting by taking, images like this and the layouts and the script, and I'll put those all together so you can see how it came about, how we went from this to that to the script to then final pages, which are amazing. But that is my process pretty much from start to finish. Languish on an idea for however long you need to until it makes sense to you. Then you start to plot out the whole story, get it all written down in prose. You pick up a pen, you start to draw out some things so that you can visually see it. Take that, really kind of boost up, your verbiage, your language, to write a script that you're going to give to an artist, because you're going to excite them. They're going to be super excited to draw this and bring it to life. And then boom, you've got an amazing comic. Thank you guys so very much. This has been my how to write comics. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask, because I love answering all of your questions. Till next time, I'm Victor Danders, the hardest working man in comics, saying peace and keep creating. Bye.